Hey everyone, this is CelestOrion, admin and writer of the Sonic Legacy comic. How's it going, everyone?
Hey everybody, it's your boy Off here, administrator, writer, sponsor of Sonic Legacy. How y'all doing?
I am Mr. Zero, inker of Sonic Legacy. How you doing?
There is a fifth dimension beyond that which is known to man. It is a dimension as vast as space and as timeless as infinity. Welcome to the Sonic Legacy podcast. I'm the writing director, Ninebreaker.
Hey, I'm Vintage Japes. I'm an inker.
Yeah, it's been a while since we've had one of these podcasts. It was supposed to be a $100 tier patron goal, but like with patrons and other projects, it kind of goes up and down. But now that we're back at the goal, we wanted to kickstart these, get those back in action so people could see how things go behind the scenes here. On this podcast today, we mainly wanted to focus on the actual issue development side here, because for anyone who's been actively reading the comics, you'll know that there's been delays in between issues. There's been a couple issues that have come out almost simultaneously. Like, I want to say it was, 3 to 4 that was only like a month, maybe 2 month difference?
Yeah, I think so. Those were pretty close.
Yeah, they were.
Quite a long time.
And then issue 6 took 6 months, or 5 to 6 months after issue 5 to come out. A little bit of a delay there. A lot of teamwork that came up on that one that everyone pulled through to mimic a style so that could go through. But we just want to talk about how we do things, how we're trying to change up the status quo behind the scenes here, and work on getting the content out faster, as well as just how the process goes in general for anyone who is curious about how we do things here.
Just an overall direction on where we're taking the comic. Any questions you might have regarding characters, story beats, locations, the whole 9 yards, and then some. This podcast, it's in the middle ground between light and shadow, between science and superstition, and it lies between the pit of man's fears and the summit of his knowledge. This is the dimension of imagination. It is an area which we call the Sonic Legacy podcast.
Thank you, Orson Welles.
Which topic did we want to go ahead and focus on first on here? Do we want to talk about the writing or the art direction?
Well, to make any project, you gotta start with the writing.
Oh yeah, definitely.
Got to get those scripts and ideas out first. So, how does the writing process exactly go? Nine, since you're the writing editor, I think it should be you who talks about that.
Well, where to start?
With
Well,
a cup
like anything I do, I just ideas tend to come in the form of thoughts that you're just milling about the day. You're just thinking about things. You might see something that comes as inspiration, because let's be real here, nothing is new under the sun, and everything is a frame of reference. So I make it my duty, usually, whatever I'm doing, to play, watch, and listen to as many things as possible, so I can get a bit broader scope of how I want to write the comic. I've always been like this ever since my schooling. I write character studies by myself. I study how a character might interact during certain situations, who they might interact with, and what they're capable of on a regular day-to-day basis. And I translate this to Sonic Legacy by starting out with an outline and then going from there. I have the luck of starting not from scratch for once, since we already have an established universe lore concerning the lore Bible, correct? Which is the basis for where we derive most of our in-world lore explanations and direction on how we're taking characters.
There's a lot in the lore Bible right now, but there's also a lot of details that are still not covered. So what we've been trying to do every so often is to replay the games, like to do like a Discord stream or something. And usually when we do, we're like, hey, I just caught on to something that I didn't notice before. Hey, I figured out how this could tie into another game and kind of fit it all under the one lore blanket. I think we actually did some of that last night when playing Riders.
Yeah, we did. We were specifically talking about the Babylon rogues and their origin, and how that tied back into the second civilization.
Or at least the Legacy second civilization, because you have to differentiate that between post-boot Archie comics, where they were trying to get their own, because I think in the post-boot comics it was the trolls. Like
God forbid. God forbid we don't establish a distaff counterpart. But but we're talking about the writing. I think it's important to note where this project started, the origin of the comic specifically.
Which
Ah,
is the
we're
game.
going that far back again.
Well, I mean, it wouldn't help. It wouldn't hurt to have a refresher course, especially after being so long.
So what you're asking is how the project just came to be, correct?
The origin of the comic, because it started out as a deeper look, because of Sonic Chronicles, if I recall.
Well, Sonic Chronicles was just one of the building blocks that just opened up all of the world possibilities and how the rest of the games could all blanket under the same lore.
Right, because of Gerald Robotnik's notes concerning the fourth civilization.
Just a single line right at the beginning of a new game that's talking about the fall of the fourth civilization, which, if you go back and replay Sonic Battle, apparently if you play through the character stories a second time, you'll unlock an excerpt from Gerald's journals, and that one also talked about a fourth great civilization 4,000 years ago. So Chronicles really was just picking up where Battle left off.
Those journals are a pretty good starting point. It's just unfortunate that the later entries contradicted the events of SA2.
A little bit, but most of the games contradict SA2 at this point. Shadow the Hedgehog contradicted SA2 with some stuff.
Shadow's a walking contradiction, imagine that.
Yeah.
Oh, Shadow, always jobbing.
I would like to think that Shadow the Hedgehog game just took place in someone else's wet dream.
Izuku's?
Yeah, there's always the odd line here and there that tries to explain away stuff.
Oh, so cool. But seriously, though.
Just remember that Shadow's favorite food are Hot Pockets.
I
Which is
actually
canon.
I did enjoy that game, but the lore made no sense.
No, that's going to be one of the very fun things to figure out whenever the time does come that we get into Legacy, is how to get it all to just wrap up on itself and still make perfect sense.
That's one of the biggest goals we have concerning Legacy, is making sense of all of the lore that Sonic has to offer. Because if you really look deeper into it, Sonic has a crap ton of lore, man.
Oh, it's crazy.
The best
Starting
part...
from the manual of Sonic 1 all the way to, was it Adventure 2, right?
It goes past that also when you think about it, because Heroes really took place after SA2 as well. And
It wasn't around about Sonic 06.
Yeah, it was about Sonic 06 where everything just kind of got retconned at that point. But yeah, the lore, not the lore Bibles, but the Japanese manuals from Sonic 1 going all the way up through Adventure and then onwards was all the same story, building off of each other. Because Sonic 2, 3, and Knuckles was all foreshadowing the events of Adventure.
Oh yeah.
Heck, isn't there some kind of flavor text in SA2 that hinted to the existence of the Black Arms, right?
Yeah, if you're playing the Dark Story, after you get through Eggman's first level, when he's going to awake Shadow, on the ground, I believe in yellow text, it was talking about warning astronomers have concluded that monstrous blacks, and then it cuts off, but there's a very good chance that it was going to delve into a little bit of the Black Arms there as well.
And that's exactly what I mean. Most of this franchise has a metric ton of lore just hidden away like that in manuals, in the games, in concept art, in just about everything. That's one of the biggest pieces about Sonic in general, is that there's like this vast and rich world just sitting there, not being done anything with.
I would say... Oh, go ahead.
The only problem with all this lore is like y'all mentioned earlier, from game to game, the games have had in comics to an extent have had a bit of a problem keeping their own consistency. You know, what's canon in one game might hardly even be referenced in the next, or, you know, again in the case of 06 and onward, completely retconned in favor of new canon.
Yeah, it's very weird.
I mean, the mid-2000s in general just had this weird thing where Emerl was a major character for like 3 games in a year and then was just completely forgotten.
Yeah. So you have all this extensive lore. You do have tons and tons of lore, but it's all very inconsistent lore.
Mm-hmm. I want to say that the biggest culprits started in the year 2000, which is when Colors first introduced, because from there onward is when it didn't really look back on any of the previous stuff, and it's like, nope, we're just moving forward.
That's the problem when you hire writers that never played a Sonic game before.
Which that is a sourceable fact, though.
It is,
It
yeah.
is.
I feel attacked.
But you watch playthroughs and other things. That's more than what they did.
They didn't even bother to watch a fucking.
They looked
Let's
up a
Play.
Wikipedia article on Sonic.
Like, anyone could edit those to whatever they like. So that's not very possible lore right there.
I guess that's what I'm trying to say. Is it takes effort to understand, like the vast majority of the world itself. And like I said a little bit ago, that's one of the main goals of Legacy is to make all of this coherent and enjoyable to the reader.
While also fitting in some nods and ideas from the other continuities as well, because there's little bits of elements from Fleetway, from Archie, SatAM, AOSTH, maybe some X sprinkled in. We just want to take everything that made Sonic and just wrap it all up into one nice blue hedgehog burrito.
Sonic has a vast mythos that you can draw many, many things from. That's probably one of its bigger appeals, is that it appeals to a wide range of people and all over the place.
Oh yeah, Sega went hardcore on getting all the demographics they could.
Oh yeah.
I'm not going to assume that this project is going to please everyone, and that's definitely not the goal. We just wanted to make use of every facet of Sonic that there was.
Yep.
Now, we've been talking about the ideas and everything like that, but we haven't talked about like how we actually handle it, though.
Well, yeah, that was the first question. My bad. I went off on a tangent. I'm so sorry. Cancel the podcast. Oh no. How we start with the
Launch the podcast app from the home screen of your iPhone or iPad.
what?
Podcast
No, shut up.
name of
God, damn.
First, we start by angering Siri, who demands a sacrifice for good writing.
Siri demands a virgin sacrifice for this good writing.
Alright, Nine, we'll miss you.
Yeah, no. Hey, wait a second. Y'all jokers, I swear.
We are in a podcast, right?
Yeah, we're in the podcast. Go on, 9.
To start with the writing process, we establish a document and then we write the outline for where we want to take that particular issue. Since issue 1 started with Sonic 1 and went all the way to issue 5, that's Sonic 1's arc right there. We want to try to do the games in entire arcs, like for example, issue 6 to 8.
10.
No, issue 10. That's right. I forgot.
We
that.
wrote that issue for Christ's sake.
Listen, it's been months, okay? We start by creating an outline on where we want to take the issue to go, and then we try to segue into the next issue to make it coherent and, readable.
To build off of what he's saying there, we try not to write too far ahead on any particular arc. So right now, we're currently working and releasing on the Sonic 2 arc, which he said was issues 6 through 10. So we're writing ahead through the Sonic 3 arc, but we don't want to get too far, like getting into the Sonic and Knuckles section and everything, because we don't want to possibly have new ideas and have to backpedal on it.
Oh yeah, as
Listen,
long as you got a basic idea of where the story's going, it doesn't really matter about all the details until they become more relevant. That way you don't write yourself into a corner early on.
Well, we have the basic ideas all the way up through just about Forces at this point, but the thing is we're not actually like fleshing it out, and we're just...
We've got a general synopsis of where we want the plot to go, and we're just kind of filling in the gaps as we move along.
And that's not even to include the original stories and contents that we're going to have in there. We just wanted to get the classic era out of the way to establish who the characters are and some of the world that they're in.
Man, I must look like an idiot. You guys explained it much better than I did. I'm not used to doing live takes like this.
You'll get used to it.
You're very passionate.
To build off of what Nine was saying here as well, we have several different documents in our drive. Actually, we have a mega outline that has all the way up to certain points exactly the direction we want to go with the comic, that I think it's solidified up to Fighters right now that we want to do.
Yeah, the mega outlines is all the way to Fighters, and that's from Sega or Sonic CD. right after Sonic and Knuckles.
Yeah, some people are probably going to be a little confused that we're putting Sonic CD after Sonic and Knuckles when you would think it would take place before Sonic 2. There's lore reasons why we're putting it after there, but we're not going to dive too deep into that. Spoilers.
That's spoiler territory.
We don't want to spoil stuff.
We also have separate documents where all of the games are listed, and whenever we have an idea for a specific game, if it's approved by all of the different writing heads, we post it into said document under that particular game. That way we know how to fall back on it.
Mm-hmm.
Most of the writing process has to deal with fleshing out these details. Like, I'll provide an outline for where we want to take the issue, and then I'll assign a writer to script it out. And then I oversee the process, and if it's good enough, then we hand it off to pencils.
Also, one of the things that I see on different online communities is just how we handle ideas and everything. It's like, oh, well, if such and such person is involved with writing, then that means such and such action is bound to happen eventually. And one of the things that we do on the project here is whenever it comes to major decisions and things like that, we actually call votes on it, and we always go with a majority vote. And let's say someone wants to vote no on something, we always try to get a reason why that is to kind of get the mentality or mindset of everyone's opinion on here.
This also goes for story ideas as well, at least major ones that affect the direction of the comic.
Oh man, the Sonic the Fighters arc had so many votes that had to be held because of difference of view and opinion. At least that's figured out now.
This is probably veering a little bit into spoiler territory, but I figured it might be a fun little anecdote to comment on. We originally weren't going to have Knuckles at all in the Fighters arc.
Oh yeah, the reason on that is because we wanted to keep him true to his character, because when you sit down and think about it, Knuckles is guarding the Master Emerald because he's the last Guardian. He wants to make sure that Chaos doesn't get reawakened and just wreak havoc on the world. So why would Knuckles come down into a fighting tournament to go slap Eggman silly when he only just met these characters and he's not going to just lug an emerald around with him? So we...
Or is he?
So I was just not even going to include him, and there was some discontent from one of the writers there. So the whole day was spent trying to figure out, okay, well, if we want him in there, how are we going to make it work with it making sense? And after several hours, I managed to come up with an idea that all the other writers like, you know what, that actually makes perfect sense. Let's build off that. And so now we have a way to include him.
Bring the Master Emerald in as a spectator.
No, that's not
It's not really...
No. It's just going to be a robot clone of Knuckles. Oh, I wasn't supposed to say that.
Very
You're
funny.
mad, man. But
It's not until Sonic Adventure 1 do we start exploring Knuckles as a character more thoroughly.
Which makes sense.
It's because we don't really have much to go off of besides Sonic 3, SNK, and everything else in between, which were mostly just spin-off games, and maybe Knuckles Chaotix, but that doesn't have to do with Knuckles, really.
No, Knuckles was just kind of there by proxy. It was mostly the Chaotix. That's also going to be a fun arc to work with.
Yeah.
But we've done a lot of talking about writing. How about the actual issue development? Because we have some artists and inkers in the group here.
Well, we do it as a step-by-step structure. When the writer is done writing the script concerning the comic, we hand it off to pencils, who at first starts with thumbnails, rough sketches on where they might want to take or how they interpret the script. And then once the thumbnails are approved, they start actually sketching it out. When the sketches are done, it's handed off to inkers who embolden all the lines and make it nice and pretty. And then it's handed off to colors who flatten and then shade it, and then letters, and then the whole comic's finished.
That's basically it.
The main issue why issue 6 took so long is because we had a colorist who retired, but they already had a few pages done, and I didn't want to just throw away the work, so everyone actually managed to come together to replicate the style.
It's a lot more difficult than it needed to be.
It was.
Sometimes the issues take a little bit longer because even though we have a lot of staff in the server, the question is how active said staff are. Like, part of the structure and development part that we were talking about here is we've been doing some changes in cleanup here that whenever there's just too long of bouts of inactivity, we remove the roles and reassign it. Like, one of the things we're focusing on right now is that once a week, there should be some form of update from whoever's working on a certain aspect of an issue, even if it's just so much to say, hey, I'm busy, life's kicking my ass or something like that, I need more time. As long as you're saying something like that, we're perfectly fine with it. We know how to work around it. But we've also had some issues where there just has not been any communication whatsoever. Issue 7... No, not issue 7. Issue 8 was one of those where we had a penciler who just wasn't responding to any kind of pings. So after a month, we're like, okay, gonna hand it off to someone else.
That's the infuriating part. You hand a role to somebody, and when you when you work for something, even if it's just volunteer and you're not getting paid for it yet, I mean, you're expected to put in a reasonable amount of work, but when you go weeks and weeks without any updates whatsoever, especially when you're active in other places, it just doesn't work, man.
Yeah, we're not naming names because this has happened to a few different people already, so this isn't like any kind of call-out post or anything like that, because that's not what we do. But, like Nine said there... Oh, you want to go ahead?
I was just gonna say, it just takes 1 second to tell, like, anyone, your friends or family, hey, what's up? Or, I'm busy.
Yeah, it just takes a moment to just say, hey, can't do anything right now. But, like Nine said in his last post, not paid yet. We've been doing more pushes on our Patreon page. That way, we could actually start getting a structure for flat rates on pages that are completed and things like that. More incentive for the artists to work on this stuff. That way, they could actually see something back. The reason why we didn't have that going right now is we just weren't realistically making enough, because if you split everything by then, everyone's only like maybe making $1 and stuff like that. So everyone had voted for it to just be a community pool. That way, if something happens, we could tap into it, put back in, stuff like that. But that is something we are focusing on, is paying the artists. Even if it's not a lot at the time, that is still one of our big goals.
Due to popular interest, we actually implemented a newer $100 tier recently. Because the other tiers were $1 to $50, and then the next one was $2.50.
Which was the gag tier.
Yeah, a couple of people showed interest, and we thought, hey, well, if they just want to pay $100, then fine. But that's only been, recent.
Some people are probably sitting here thinking, why would anyone want to spend $100 on this? Well, we added it because there were people who wanted to spend $100 on it. Like, we had a team meeting talking about, okay, well, what are some of the things that we could include in it? So we had all the previous rewards, like the commission piece once a month that's fully colored and everything, as well as physical releases of the issues as they're made. And once we get a design finished and everything, we're going to get one of the new perks that Patron has, which is the merchandise. We're going to get a Legacy Design hoodie to go with it as well.
Which is something I'm looking forward to, because physical merch is the best.
On top of getting the other benefits the server has to offer when you become a sponsor.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
So we're trying to make it where it feels like it's worth the money, but most people, some of the people that we have pledging don't even want the perks. They just want to support the comic.
Oh yeah.
I still have to harass them every month. I'm like, hey, go claim your artwork. And they're like, no.
I'm honestly really flattered people want to donate to the comic at all. Like, that's just, like, as someone who's always worked for free and only recently started taking commission work, it blows my mind that people want to support you for something that you do.
It's really nice, yeah.
So this is from me to you, to the audience. Thank you very much for even just reading the comic. That means a lot to me.
Mm-hmm. And also, the thing about pushing to Patreon is the more patrons you get, the more that you can do for flat rates to pay the artists back, which will also give more incentive for new artists to join, which will get issues knocked out quicker, which in turn could promote the patron, and it's just an ever-growing cycle if handled right.
What? Increased production?
What do you call this amazing new system?
That's already on top of the other stuff we have going for the comic, such as newsletters, debug modes, which are our version of the off panels. on top of the server benefits you get for being a sponsor, monthly commissions, and I feel like I'm forgetting something.
Things that's
I'm
it.
just wanting to pledge.
Access to the sponsor exclusive Discord
yeah.
server channels, I guess.
That's right. Yeah.
For people who pledge certain amounts, there are aspects of the server that they can unlock, like the Sponsor Plus role. They actually get to see issue development as it happens. Some people would be worried about, like, well, if you're given this, the people, aren't you worried about leaks or anything? It's been 2 years and I haven't seen any leaks, so...
And besides, most of the sensitive information we have is already stored away in our Google Drive.
Yeah.
I mean, like, thumbnails or pages in progress and stuff like that. I haven't seen any get shared around, so I'm not too worried about it.
I've seen some Patreons where they'll just post progress on the Patreon itself. It's basically the same thing.
Mm-hmm. Which is something that I wanted to do as well. We're still working on getting more activity on the Patreon itself. Right now, we've got the bi-weekly debug strips, which 1 week they'll get posted on the Patreon, which, by the way, today's Saturday, a new one's going to be going up. And then on the following week, it's going to go public on Twitter. So people who pledge, I think it's $5 or more, they get the early access content.
They get access to the debug early contests. I think I just had a brain fart. Fuck. They get access to content a week early. Oh, hang on. I need to go use the bathroom. Be right back.
Alright.
I should have taken a bathroom break before I started this. Shit.
It happens.
At least I plan to hit.
So don't worry about it.
Going back into the writing side of things, though, because honestly, there's not too much that you can talk about on the artwork because it speaks for itself. There have been a lot of posts going on around the Sonic community in general lately about people wanting certain characters featured or certain ideas wanting to come back. What are your thoughts on that?
Which in particular?
Just any that you've been seeing, like, for example, there was a hashtag going around recently, Rally for Sally, where people wanted their older continuity, like, let's say, SatAM and Archie comics, which have been around for decades, but never really got any kind of notice from Sega, no real any kind of feature, and they wanted more representation. What are your thoughts about other sides of the Sonic franchise?
Honestly, oh sorry, I'll let you go.
Okay. I really enjoy like all the other sides of the Sonic franchise. I like the Archie comics. I like all those weird cartoons they made. It's really interesting to see what other writers, in the way other writers interpret the Sonic series and the kind of weird characters they create and put in them. Because like honestly, you bring up a picture of Nate Morgan, and people who are not familiar with those comics are going to be wondering what that's supposed to be.
Oh yeah.
They're not going to believe you when you say it's a Sonic character. And that's the fun part about it. But it would be cool to see some of the more obscure characters hop back, but I suppose that's unlikely at this point, considering we can't even get characters that have appeared in games back into the main series.
Oh, yeah.
Because of the supposed classic modern rift split at that point, correct?
Is that like an established thing?
Iizuka claims it is, that classic characters, like let's say Mighty and Ray, Iizuka has stated that these are classic only characters, so you're probably not going to see them in, like, let's say IDW, unless Sega somehow
Which one's
loosens
Iizuka?
that.
Which is dumb as hell, by the way.
Iizuka's the one who's basically the spokesperson for Sonic.
Is he
Works
the
with all the
same one?
game's director.
Is
One
he
of
the
the
same one that said that
Two
like
worlds.
yeah, the two worlds, that there's the human world and then there's the like Sonic world?
So that's another point I actually wanted to bring up on here. So, linguistics time. The term world has, or isekai, if you will, has so many uses and differences in Japan. And the thing is that I think I am 99.99% sure that whenever it said that there's two worlds for Sonic, it's not talking about a human world, and I'm just going to use the term Mobian. I know some people like and don't like that, I don't care. But two worlds, human and Moby and everything, when world could be used as just a style of living, or just a culture, or things like that.
Okay.
So,
I wanted to say something back on your the thoughts on previous Archie characters and all that. I just started reaching the Archie comics with you guys on this channel, the read-alongs, and I would love to see Sally sometimes. But even if it's just some form of mention or something, Sally, Boomer, all of them.
remember, it's Rotor. Sega mandated it.
Oh yeah, Rotor. But
mandates.
Oh, that's a hot topic in the community itself, is whether or not the mandates are real or not.
From what Ian Flynn
Legacy
has
has
said, they are,
mandates.
but,
Legacy
like,
does
they're
have
not
mandates, yes.
they're not like hard written things.
No.
No,
But,
there's no definitive proof of mandates existing. It's a lot of hearsay, so that's why it's such a split conversation point within the fandom.
From
Like
what
if
I've heard,
you-
the mandates are more of a general thing, like the whole Sonic can't be emotional. What that really means is just sort of keep it in character.
Yeah. Like, him kind of just balled up on himself crying and everything is what caught Sega's attention to begin with. They're like, wait a minute, no.
Yeah, so
Issue 149, I believe it was? Somewhere around
Like,
there, because
he's
I
a-
physically own it.
Is that one of those in the future ones, like
No.
the Moby?
That was 147. That was my first issue I bought, ironically enough, when I
Wow.
started actually going to collect them. Because my first issue was Sonic Firsts.
Ooh.
My first exposure to the Archie comics was just all the covers and little comics that they gave you in the Sonic Mega Collection on the GameCube.
I think I watched Sad AM when I was a kid. But
Oh, I did. That was good.
I watched both
That-
Sat AM and AOSTH.
and Sonic Underground.
Oh yeah, I forgot about that one.
We don't talk about Underground here.
I used
Everybody
to
forgets
love it as
about
a kid.
that one. I used to watch them all whenever I was younger, but I wasn't huge into Sonic. And I always remember specifically wondering why, like, okay, Sonic's got a brother and sister in this cartoon, but then, like, the Set AM and Adventures of Sonic the Hedgehog and Sonic Underground, they would come on like back to back on Saturday mornings, whenever I was younger. So I would watch the one, and it would have like Sally and Bunny and all them, and then the very next one would be Underground, and it would this entirely different scenario, entirely different characters. And I remember just being younger and being like, is this the same show? They're both about they're both about the same character, but it's like totally different shows. And honestly, whenever I was younger, that was one of the things that disinterested me from getting into Sonic or anything like that, because it's like, I'm sitting here watching these two shows and they're completely different. So it's like, what even is this character? And then I would go play the games on the Sega, Sonic 1 and 2 and 3 and Knuckles were out, way back then or whatever. And I'm like, this is nothing like the shows. Where's all the characters from the shows? It's just Sonic and the little fox dude. So yeah, thanks Saturday morning cartoons. You ruined me from Sonic.
I liked them. They were just there for enjoyment. They never really. I like Sonic Underground because of the plot, but nothing else matched that. It was its own little thing off in its own little world.
Sonic
grew-
Underground in particular is very weird if you go back and watch like certain episodes. Like,
Oh,
I don't know
jeez.
what's going on in some of those.
And I grew up with Sat AM, so I have nostalgia glasses. At this point,
Yeah.
I completely accept it as, hey, none of this really fits what Sonic is, but I still have a way of appreciating it as well. But I know how to draw the difference between what Sonic is and what that said it was.
Can't
So-
say I ever liked Set AM or Underground.
Also, fun
Oh.
fact about Sonic Underground, Sonic's singing voice was provided by the guy who voices Double D from Ed, Edd and Eddy.
Huh,
Oh, I did not know that.
that's a fun fact.
With that fact in mind, you can really hear it if you listen to some of the songs.
Looking back at the cartoons, AOSTH was a little bit closer to the games than what Sat AM was, because there were more elements taken out of it, like zone names. It actually had the Chaos Emeralds in it.
It's the most
Robotnik
90s
actually
cartoons.
did things and had the Eggmobile.
Oh yeah. I like the idea of Eggman having more of a personality than just being the big bad guy that just does stuff to do stuff.
Yeah, in Sad AM, he was rather cookie cutter.
Yeah.
I think that's an interesting topic to explore, our version of Eggman.
Yeah, that would
Oh,
be
man.
interesting.
But I don't want to let off what's coming up in the next issue we release as well, because this isn't really a spoiler. We mentioned before that we were doing the offshoots Mobius Legacy, which was like our equivalent of Sonic Universe. That's the next issue we're focusing on releasing next, is issue 1 of Mobius Legacy, which is going to cover Eggman's backstory and how he came to be who he is. That one I'm excited on getting out for people to see.
His motivations regarding his character and why he does what he does.
I'm really excited for that one. It's one I'm working on.
I think if some people were on the fence with Legacy because of how the Sonic 1 arc went, because some people were a little wishy-washy about things, I think this one might hook some more people in.
Issues 1 to 5 were pretty rough.
Oh yeah.
Oh boy, here we go.
Well, I'm just gonna quote something AWF has said before. Nothing out there ever has a good first issue.
Nope.
No. I mean, we read the Sonic Archie. I agree, that was not the best. And honestly, if I read it on my own, I probably wouldn't have continued it. If I would have read it back when I was a kid, I would have been like, this is...
Hell, issue 1 of IDW wasn't anything special.
No, it wasn't.
It was very basic, yeah. And, I mean, I'm not offended if people don't like how Legacy started off. I mean, me looking back, I'm like, yeah, this could have been a lot better and different things could be handled differently, but it's one of those things that you take moving forward.
I'm really excited for the comic moving forward because I only became editor after I joined the comic after issue 2 dropped.
Mm-hmm.
I was a normal writer at first, but after like several months worth of working on the comic, I was elected.
Issue 6 was the first one you got your mitts on writing editing, and I think it's really obvious taking a look at like the Tapas metrics, because February was our most popular month because we had the issue 1 dub come out on the Sonic Paradox YouTube, so obviously you're going to get a lot of bleed-through traffic there. But June, the whole month of June, with just issue 6 coming out, almost competed with it on its own.
Damn.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I'm quite proud of that then. Nice.
So yeah, something was done right with issue 6.
Well, hell, I must be doing something right then. Shit. Okay.
And I'm just excited to get these next few issues out when you actually start getting into the meat of what's going on with the plot. The first arc, Sonic 1 through 5, was just an introductory to establish a couple of characters.
Always got to get the early stuff out of the way to get to the juicy bits.
Oh yeah, definitely.
And that's just the Sonic 2 arc we're talking about. Like, there are arcs that I'm really, really looking forward to that are still a ways away.
In particular, for what we have planned for now, I'm really looking forward to the end of Sonic 2, as well as the beginning and middle, well, I guess all of Sonic 3 and Knuckles in general.
Oh, man, it's going to reach such a climax.
That's why I've spent so much time poring over the details for issue 10, 11, 12, all the way to about 16 to 18. And that's just me taking down notes on my own personal stuff that I haven't actually presented to the team yet. I want it to be perfect. Well, as perfect as it can be. I'm a perfectionist by nature, just as Celeste.
It's true.
But your writing is great, so...
His writing is great.
No, it's not. Shut up.
If you ever get some time, you should check out his Safe for Work writing. Like,
Yes.
where he just, he writes most of his stuff within Legacyverse. Like, it's not necessarily canon or anything, but it's using, like, the same lore and world building. Those are some really good reads.
Well,
Oh, yeah.
I tried to establish that their ostensible nature, like the events within these stories may or may not come to pass. Nothing is set in stone. This is just me exploring the possibilities that could happen within universe.
Yeah. I sure did enjoy them.
And since I like showing off my work to the people, they're like, "Wow, this is really good. We should add this to the comic." And I'm like, "No, please."
Actually, there was one of his writings that was almost perfect in my sense, and one of the characters we'll be introducing later is going to be built off of one of his writings.
Oh, we're talking about her. Oh, we can't reveal her just yet, but...
No, not yet.
Not yet. Ooh.
To split that comment here in half, it is the 40-minute mark, so I think for the most part we covered the writing and art and structure side here. Did you want to go ahead and open on to the live Q&A?
Yeah, that's fine.
Okay, well, I'm going to go to the other half of that comment here, where Evan was asking, how many years do you think Legacy will go on for?
Until
As
we
long
turn
as
to
possible.
dust.
Just laugh, because at our current rate of an issue every 6 months or something, I don't know, our lifespan. If we had monthly releases like a standard comic like Archie did, because we can't say IDW, they don't have monthly releases.
If I had my way, into my afterlife.
But if we had monthly releases, probably at least 10 years.
I would hope so.
Well, if monthly releases are back in the Patreon, if we can afford to pay our artists and our writers and everybody else more often, I think production would increase exponentially.
Well, yeah, but that would involve having the backing to do so, because there are artists on the team who don't even want paid for it.
That's true.
I'm one of them. I'm doing this because I'm having fun.
Me too.
Same.
So a little bit of cash wouldn't hurt. Sorry.
Some of them are doing it to have some fun too, but yeah, a little bit of cash wouldn't hurt either. Especially for those who are struggling.
Yeah, and no one's
It's a
judging
passion
that.
project. It's a passion project, first and foremost.
Mm-hmm. Definitely is. Otherwise, we wouldn't be here right now, huh?
Gonna scroll up and see if there are any other questions here.
I
I
think
definitely
I saw
saw
a
a few
few.
go past.
Here we go. Are you gonna Infinite the Jackal asks, are you gonna use characters just from the games or from other sources like Sonic Boom and Archie comics? Was kind of answered earlier, but I'll just say it again. We're taking ideas and some characters from every side of the Sonic franchise, so there will be some Archie characters. Mostly the Sat AM included ones, though. We're being careful with some characters that we take or how many, because we don't want to oversaturate.
The ones from the games are a no-brainer, as well as some of the spin-offs, like the Hooligans, for example. We mostly want to stay away from... since we're pulling what we want from the Sonic mythos concerning the comics, games, and TV shows, we're trying to avoid characters that could have potential legal ramifications. We wish to avoid any potential lawsuits from certain people. It's not that we don't want to use them, but the comic is about Sonic and the world from his point of view, as well as his interaction with it. That's not to say he's not going to interact with many other characters throughout the history, but we're trying to pick and choose what can and cannot work in the context of Legacy itself. For example, in one of the upcoming issues after ML1, we might see some familiar faces you may or may not have heard before.
Oh yeah, I can't wait for that.
One of the questions that we ask if a character is brought up in our ideas channel is, what do they contribute to the comic?
As the character itself?
Yes.
Well, the characters, I'm sure everyone's heard the whole, Sonic has too many friends argument before, correct?
Oh god,
Yep.
that one. You heard that more like early on in the 2010s, though.
Well, just like with Sonic himself, we're exploring their characterization and what they can bring to the comic. What we're doing with Sonic and what his interactions with people can be, because you have to remember he's a globetrotter. He's going to meet many faces during his adventure, exploring the traits that they were forgotten about himself, as well as his role in exploring his motivation to do what he does. On top of these characters identifying what Sonic is, who he is, and if they're friends with him. Like this is I'm gonna try to not spoil anything about this, but one of the major cruxes of exploring Sonic's character and what the people he interacts with brings to the comic, like for example, Tails. He's been a presence in the franchise since Sonic 2. And we're exploring his character of how he grows up to be his own man, and he grows to be independent, and what he views as right or wrong. Like his idolatry in Sonic, idolizing him as a role model, he'll come to see what Sonic's true nature is, and he'll want to grow away from that. I'm not gonna say what that is or how that entails, but that's just one of the many examples. Like since it's from Sonic's point of view, the comic itself, it's from his like what he views the world as. So too will he see what each character brings to his world.
Nice pun.
Building off that, I just want to build off that His World thing for a second. You remember that song His World by both Crush 40 and Zebrahead?
Yes.
Yep.
That was tying back into that Two Worlds comic that Iizuka made. I think, like you said, he was referring to Sonic's world, like the world from how he sees it, not exactly an actual other entire world.
Oh yeah.
Like I said, the term has many uses in Japan. There's a lot of mistranslation and misconception when it comes to localization. Like, remember the name Mobius?
Yeah. What was that off?
That was because of the Mobius strips.
I was gonna say it's just such a fun concept though, to think about there being two entirely different planetoids.
As you can personally attest in your work.
To be fair, there is so much stuff in the Sonic lore that gets misconceived in the Western world just because how poorly translated it tends to be.
Mm-hmm.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah.
I mean, if it's not two entirely different worlds, then how does Sonic X exist?
I mean, Sonic X isn't canon either. That's its own continuity.
Yeah,
Shut up, I believe is the correct answer.
Now, Jack...
We were talking about world lore and how like that guy asked what they bring to the world in general. If you listen to a lot of the songs, they're mostly told from a certain character's point of view. Like for Sonic himself, as an example, his song "It Doesn't Matter" is told entirely from it, like what he's saying, and you can derive a huge portion of his character from that song, which is officially licensed and approved. I'm just saying, like you got to pull from everything.
Yeah. I love that each character gets their own little song.
I do too, Zero.
I'm gonna go on to the... Go ahead.
I was gonna say, I love the music in the Sonic series. Even if the games are not that good, the music never fails to be great.
It's the one thing that at least Sonic gets done right. Even if it's a bad release, there's at least good music out of it. Some people say that Forces had the best soundtrack. I'm like, only a third of its soundtrack is good, and those are the Avatar stages.
Oh yeah.
And those were all the ones with the lyrics, weren't they?
Yes, those are the ones with lyrics told from the Avatar's point of view.
I'm actually really fond of the Lunar Road one. The one where Sonic runs through.
Oh yeah. I don't remember that one offhand.
Sorry to go off on another tangent. Do we have any other questions?
Yes, we do, which I was trying to get to. Shut up about music. Jack Doubt asks, okay, but what about Scourge? Same thing that we said earlier, doesn't add anything to the comic itself. Scourge is just an evil Sonic from an alternate dimension. That's all his character is, it's just an inverse Sonic.
We gotta admit though, Scourge Lockdown was a pretty bombing set of comics.
I loved. The only thing I knew about Archie before I read them was the Scourge area, and honestly, I loved Scourge. But
a lot of people do, for some reason.
I just like the idea of a evil character that's even more edgy, I guess, than...
Evil twins are always appealing.
Yeah.
Well, like I said earlier... No, go on.
I was just going to talk about Scourge. That out of all the villains or whatever, he was actually always one of my favorite because of that, because of his whole character growth, where he went from literally being I'm just bad Sonic to going full meta and being like, you know what, F it, I don't want to just be bad Sonic. I want to be my own bad character. It was a really introspective character, seeing somebody take that trope of, bad version of main character from a different world and literally having that character want to become more than that, being self-aware and knowing this is what I was created to be. I'm literally just the anti-version of this hero that everybody loves and respects, but I want to be known as being bad, on my own. that's not something you see done very often with
A lot
with
of the
that trope.
villains in Archie Sonic later on did that, and I was so appreciative of that. It turned so many of the generic villain characters into something more.
Oh yeah, I love
Like-
that was my favorite part.
I haven't read far enough ahead where all that was covered, so I don't really have any input on that topic.
Getting back to the question, no, we're not going to use Scourge.
I
Mostly
just don't
because-
feel... Go ahead.
Mostly because, like I said earlier, we want to avoid any potential legal matters because he is technically owned by Ken Penders, right?
Yes, he is owned by Ken Penders.
Right, and with the direction that we're taking the comic, while it might be an interesting character to use, he doesn't actually provide anything to the overall tone that we're setting for Legacy.
Archie did a lot of stuff with the multiverse theory and all these alternate Mobiuses and stuff like that, and that's something that we're really not going to touch or explore anything in ours. The most that we're going to do with our multiverse, if you will, is when we start introducing the Soul Dimension, which that one's going to be fun in of itself.
And everything that happens with Silver, oh boy.
Oh yeah,
Oh.
we've got some unique ideas with Silver that the games haven't done.
Or any
Alright,
Should I
continuity
say
for that matter.
Silvers?
Shut up, Celeste.
What?
You want to move on and answer another one?
Yeah, Josh T. Animations asked, if you could continue the story from Archie Comics, how would you make the comeback, the game plan? That's going to be a question asked by another question. Do you mean pre-boot or post-boot?
Yeah, that's a good question, actually.
Because Archie Sonic Online's already continuing pre-boot, but I never once considered continuing Archie Comics anyway.
I think the biggest problem with post boot is that it didn't bother to flesh out the world nearly as much as pre-boot did.
Correct. So it would be hard to continue, like, let's say IDW just all of a sudden ended up going bankrupt overnight. There's not enough of a world to really build off of, you just have some new characters. Same way as Post-Boot did, there's not much of a world to go off of.
All we really know about IDW is that it takes place on what could be just, I guess, the
Quote-unquote
Mobian
Sonic's
dimension.
world.
Yeah, right. It's just Sonic's quote-unquote world. All we really have of that world is a vague map drawn by Cream and a couple cities, villages.
And it's kind of hard to get the scale because Sonic zooms around so fast.
With how little there was of world building in both the Post-Boot and IDW, if either were to end and you were to quote-unquote continue it, you're better off just adapting characters and ideas from it and just doing your own stuff like what we are.
Here's a question then. If you had the choice between continuing on pre-boot or post-boot, which one would you rather do?
Post-Boot.
Oh, really?
Post boot.
Interesting.
I don't like... Okay, so like I said, I grew up with pre-boot, with Sat AM and everything. I acknowledge it for what it is, but it doesn't feel Sonic to me.
A lot of it was melodramatic in nature.
Oh, that's
Oh,
what made
yeah.
it so amazing.
I was always a games person, and
Shut
the
up-
pre-boot
shut
Archie
up, you
comics
crazy
just
bastard.
didn't scream out, this is Sonic. At least not in early on to the quote-unquote Dark Ages. Some people are probably going to give me shit for this, but I liked what Ian brought to the table in the pre-boot when he started getting things a little bit closer to the games, even though it was still that world. But ultimately, I would have preferred a post-boot world.
I've always
Ian,
tried.
Ian, oh,
I've always.
Ian had a lot of. Okay, go
There
ahead.
you go.
I was gonna add on to what Celeste said. Ian has a lot of really good like ideas and plots. I just think they're not executed as coherently as they could be.
Well, Ian has problem with longer stories.
Yeah, pacing a Metal Virus was just way too long.
His bigger strength lies in telling shorter arcs. You can spot this easily with what he tried to do with the Unleashed arc, which just dragged on for way too long.
Which still had its sub-arcs in it, like Champions. I love the Champions arc.
Sure, Champions was great. But as
But
soon
yeah.
as we got back to the Unleashed arc, it just it dragged on.
I'm gonna say this before I answer Sonic's question there. the thing with Legacy is it has an overall blanket lore and ongoing plot, but it's split up in miniature arcs, kind of like how Champions was a part of the Unleashed arc, so like that.
Yeah, that's a good way of putting it.
But Sonics did ask a question, will Bean Bark and Fang Nak be canon to this universe? And yes, how will they work here? Yes, they are going to be included because they were included in games. So for the most part, if they're in a game, they're going to be in Legacy.
If they were in a game or in a spin-off, they're going to be in Legacy.
As for how they'll work...
The only thing we might not pull from is certain comics or TV shows. That's about it, really.
I mean, even then, like, because the character's already been revealed, Sonic Underground, for example, we're not going to have Sonya or Manic, and we homaged the name Alina, but we're not actually using Underground's Alina for Sonic's mom.
No, just name's the same, that's it.
Yeah, it's a homage.
A tribute.
His mom, Alina, is 100% an OC.
Mm-hmm.
Aaron asks, how did Eggman get a daughter? Well, you see, Aaron, when a mad scientist and a woman love each other very much.
Hey, Aaron, go read the issues. You're staff.
Yeah.
That's what I'm talking about. Staff need to learn how to read.
Did we not? Oh my God! Did we not establish that she's not?
Don't say it. Don't say it. Make him read it. Make him read it.
Go read the issue.
Or
Eggman said himself how he got a daughter.
We're going along with what AWS said. When a man loves a woman, or if they go to an adoption agency.
What came first, the Eggman or the daughter?
Sonics asks, will spin-off titles be canon in Legacy 2 or no? Example, Sonic Shuffle and Sonic R. I personally have not played Sonic Shuffle, and Sonic R is just a racing game. There's no real lore to adapt.
Except for the additions of the metal Knuckles and Tails doll.
Yeah, I mean, that's all they had were just creations brought in. So Sonic R, don't really expect a lot. I at least didn't have any kind of coherent plans for it. Shuffle, I never played, so I don't have anything to add to the table yet. If there's any ideas that ever do get brought up, obviously we're all going to review them together.
I played Shuffle a little bit. Sonic, Amy, Tails, and Knuckles get sent to a different dimension to play a board game with a dimensional fairy.
Just sounds like the minigame mode from Sonic and the Secret Rings.
Sounds like imagination.
It's where that animation of Sonic drinking that cola came from.
Yeah, I'm familiar with some of the animations, like Sonic's barren room.
He's not a sentimental person. Leave him alone.
He's not materialistic.
I guarantee you, Sonic has like a glass case that has all of his fashionista wrist accessories. You cannot prove me wrong on that.
No, we can't.
Those rings he always wore when you got the upgrades. Don't you just love it when they ruin a character design by putting all sorts of crap on him?
Knuckles from Sonic Adventure 2. What are you talking about?
Yeah, those
Knuckles
glasses,
had so much on him.
Oh.
Hey, now those rings looked good on Sonic.
No, the rings were fine. It was when he got like the helmets and the weird like things on his shoes that just were oversized and bizarre.
Helmets? What
Like-
are you talking about?
No, not helmets, like headwear.
What headwear?
Sonic didn't have headwear in SA2 or 1. He
No.
only had the shades and riders.
I would like to think Sonic's room is just cluttered with a bunch of stuff that he picked up along the way on his trips everywhere.
My favorite pickup was Tails' You Tried badge from Sonic Adventure 1.
Ouch.
Too.
We got
It
time
does
for
look like one of those.
We've got time for one more question here from Tasty Ways. Any SatAM characters that are going to be included? Well, I mean, we've already released artwork of Sally and Nicole, so... Now, I will say that even though that we have released the Sally and Cole, do not expect them to fill the exact same roles as they did in SatAM, because SatAM was a plot where the world was already taken over by Robotnik and they were freedom fighters. Obviously, that kind of plot's not going to work here because that never happened. So, like, you may see familiar faces, but don't expect the same background.
A large part of why that is the comic itself takes place on an alternate Mobius during what, at first, referred to as a period of peace. There hasn't been any notable events or wars in some time, prompting would-be adventurers to seek out their own throws and chills. Sonic himself is one of these people, and he, in fact, does have a reason to be out and about when we meet him in issue 1.
Mm-hmm.
Which will be covered at a later date and time as why he was out and about. It's just not quite ready there to dive into yet, but it will.
My point regarding Sally and everybody else is that since this is an alternate Mobius where it's currently what's perceived as peacetime, everybody that was in Satayam or the comics in general were or are doing their own thing at the moment. They exist within the universe, but oh, I see it. They exist within the universe, but for all intents and purposes, they're not going to be as prominent.
Correct.
Not, that doesn't mean we're not going to see them, but they're not going to be at the forefront all the time like they used to be.
Mm-hmm. Nope, it's too late. We hit our hour mark, so there were a couple of questions that didn't get to be answered. Definitely apologize about that, but we try to keep these down to 1 hour podcasts. Definitely save any questions that you have, though, because we're going to get back into scheduling these either once a month or twice a month. But we'll announce beforehand when we're ready to go live with these again. Any closing thoughts from everyone?
I hope y'all have a nice day.
I hope you enjoy the comic. I'm really excited for where I'm going to take it.
Yeah, what he said.
Copycat.
Oh.
Hey.
Talk AWF.
Oh, no, I'm good. Yeah.
Okay, well, we're going to go ahead and end the podcast here, so everyone who's stuck around, you make sure you have yourself a great 4th of July, and we will see you next time. Until then, take care.
Peace and hair grease.
Bye-bye.
Au revoir.